You know that strange moment when someone hurts you and instead of walking away, you feel pulled closer. Not because the pain feels good, not because you enjoy being treated badly, but because something inside you quietly insists that this person still matters, maybe more than ever. You replay the good moments in your mind. You search for small signs that they still care. You tell yourself that if you could just understand them better, things might change. From the outside, it can look confusing, even irrational. People might say things like, "Why are you still there?" or "Just leave." But the truth is, most people misunderstand what's really happening in moments like this. They assume it's about weakness, or low self-esteem, or some kind of emotional blindness. But what they're seeing is usually something much deeper, a pattern shaped by the human brain itself. And once you understand that, the experience begins to make a lot more sense. Because the brutal reality of being addicted to someone who hurts you isn't really about love. It's about how the nervous system learns to attach. Psychologists sometimes refer to this dynamic as trauma bonding, a pattern where emotional pain and emotional reward become tightly intertwined. At first, the connection feels intense, electric even. There are moments of closeness that feel unusually meaningful, moments where the other person is warm, attentive, almost magnetic. Your brain records those moments very clearly. But then something shifts. Distance appears, coldness, rejection. And strangely, those painful moments don't weaken the attachment, they deepen it. Neuroscience helps explain why. The human brain is highly sensitive to what researchers call intermittent reinforcement, a reward pattern where positive experiences appear unpredictably. Slot machines use this principle. So do many addictive substances. But the same mechanism can happen in relationships. When affection appears inconsistently, sometimes present, sometimes withdrawn, the brain starts chasing the reward even more intensely. Dopamine, the chemical associated with motivation and pursuit, spikes not when the reward is constant, but when it's uncertain. So the mind begins to search. What did I do wrong? How can I get back to the good version of them? The pursuit itself becomes chemically reinforcing, which is why someone can feel emotionally hooked even while experiencing repeated hurt. From the outside, it looks like staying in something painful. From the inside, it feels like trying to restore something meaningful. And this pattern rarely appears out of nowhere. Often, it connects quietly to earlier experiences, especially the way emotional safety was learned growing up. In many childhood environments, love and unpredictability coexist. A parent may be caring in some moments, distant in others. Affection might appear, but not consistently. For a developing nervous system, this creates a very specific kind of emotional learning. Connection becomes associated with effort. Closeness requires patience, understanding, maybe even enduring discomfort. Over time, the brain adapts to this pattern. It learns that love can feel intense, uncertain, and slightly out of reach. So when a similar dynamic appears later in life, someone warm one day, cold the next, the nervous system recognizes the rhythm, not consciously, but emotionally. It feels familiar, and familiarity is one of the strongest forces in human attachment. None of this means someone is choosing pain, and it certainly doesn't mean someone is broken. In fact, what's often happening is the nervous system trying to preserve connection in the only way it learned how. The brain evolved to prioritize attachment above almost anything else. For most of human history, losing connection with important people could literally mean losing safety. So the mind becomes very skilled at holding on to relationships, even complicated ones. not because suffering is desirable, but because connection feels essential. And it's important to say something here that often gets lost in conversations about these dynamics. This pattern is not morally worse than any other way of attaching. Different people develop different emotional strategies. Some protect themselves by distancing quickly. Some avoid closeness altogether. Some stay and try to repair. None of these patterns make someone stronger or weaker. They simply reflect different ways the nervous system learned to navigate relationships. But there is a quieter layer to this experience that many people don't talk about, because the addiction to someone who hurts you isn't only about pain, it's also about hope. Hope that the warm version of them will return.
Hope that the connection you once felt was real. Hope that the story isn't finished yet. Hope can be powerful, sometimes beautifully so. But hope can also keep the nervous system locked into a cycle, waiting for a version of someone that appears just often enough to keep the attachment alive. And that's the paradox. The same emotional depth that allows someone to stay loyal, patient, and empathetic can also make it harder to step away when the relationship becomes harmful. What looks like emotional vulnerability from the outside is often a reflection of emotional capacity. The capacity to care deeply, the capacity to see complexity in another person, the capacity to believe that people are more than their worst moments. Those qualities are not weaknesses. They're human traits that in the right environment become profound strengths. But when they meet someone who repeatedly causes harm, the nervous system can become caught between two powerful drives, protecting yourself and preserving the bond. That tension can feel exhausting, confusing, sometimes even isolating. But the experience itself makes sense. There's nothing irrational about a brain that learned to fight for connection. Nothing abnormal about a nervous system that struggles to detach from someone who once felt emotionally important. It simply means your mind adapted to relationships in a very human way, and adaptation is what the brain does best. The story, of course, doesn't end with understanding the pattern. Understanding simply removes the shame. It replaces the question, "What's wrong with me?" with a quieter, more accurate one. What did my nervous system learn about love? And when that question appears, something interesting tends to happen. Curiosity begins to replace self-blame. Compassion begins to replace confusion. And slowly, the mind starts seeing its own patterns with a little more clarity. Not judgment, just awareness. Because most people never realize how much of their relationship life is shaped by patterns they learned long before they had words for them. And once you start noticing those patterns, you begin seeing parts of yourself that were always there, quietly shaping the way you connect. If some of this felt strangely familiar, there's probably a deeper story behind it. And that story, the one your nervous system has been carrying for years, is often more interesting and more meaningful than people first expect.